The envelope felt heavy in my hand. Not "there's a check inside" heavy. It was more like "we are about to ruin your week" heavy. It was certified mail. That's never good. Certified mail is the universal language of people who want to sue you, divorce you, or, in my case, tell you that your grass is a quarter-inch too long. I didn't even have to look at the return address to know who sent it. The font was Arial, size 12. Bold, it screamed bureaucracy. It screamed Oakbridge Estates Homeowners Association. I stood in my doorway, the humid Florida air sticking my t-shirt to my back, and ripped the envelope open. I bypassed the polite greeting, if you can call "Dear Resident" polite, and skipped right to the bold red text at the bottom. Notice of Violation, Section 4, Paragraph C. Description: unauthorized utilization of non-conforming shade material. Blue. Fine, $250. $250? I said it out loud, my voice cracking just a little. For a tarp? I looked past the letter, down the concrete expanse of my driveway, to the object of their ire. It was a tarp. A standard, heavy-duty, waterproof, royal blue tarp I'd bought from Home Depot for $20. Underneath that tarp sat my baby, a 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1. Well, baby might be a stretch. Currently, she looked more like a tetanus shot waiting to happen. She was stripped to the frame, sanded down to bare metal in spots, and absolutely terrified of moisture. I'm a nurse. I work 3 12-hour shifts a week in the ER. My life is blood, trauma, and adrenaline. My days off are supposed to be for sanding, welding, and finding inner peace through the smell of WD-40. This tarp was the only thing standing between my bare metal quarter panels and the relentless subtropical thunderstorms. I crumpled the letter, shoved it into the pocket of my cargo shorts, and marched down the driveway. I didn't need to wonder how they knew. I knew how they knew. As if summoned by my spike in blood pressure, a white golf cart whirred around the corner. It was moving at a brisk 5 miles per hour, the electric engine whining like a dying mosquito. It was her. Patricia. Patricia is the president of the Oakbridge Estates, HOA. She is a woman who has never encountered a rule she didn't want to enforce with the zeal of a crusader. She wore her uniform, beige capris, a floral print blouse that looked like a couch from 1985, and a visor pulled low over oversized sunglasses. She slowed the cart as she approached my driveway, her head swiveling with robotic precision. She stopped right at the curb. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how my shift at the hospital was. She pulled a clipboard from the dashboard. "Jack," she said. It wasn't a greeting. It was an accusation. "Patricia," I replied, walking down to the edge of my property line. "I see you've been busy with the mail." She tapped her pen against the clipboard. Click, click, click. "I don't deliver the mail, Jack. The Postal Service does. I just ensure the standards of our community are upheld." "It's a tarp, Pat. It's going to rain this afternoon. I have bare metal on the Mustang." "The Mustang!" She said the word like it was a contagious disease. "We've discussed the vehicle, Jack. Project cars are supposed to be garaged." "My garage is full," I said, pointing to the closed garage door. "It's full of the engine block, the transmission, and about $3,000 in tools. The body has to sit here until I can clear space. The tarp protects it." She sighed, a long, suffering sound that suggested my existence was a personal burden she had to carry. She stepped out of the golf cart. She wasn't tall, maybe 5'2", but she carried herself with the authority of a Supreme Court justice. Section 4, Paragraph C, she recited from memory. All exterior coverings must be aesthetically harmonious with the primary dwelling and the surrounding landscape. Royal blue is not a harmonious color, Jack. It's an eyesore. It clashes with the Tuscan earth tone of your stucco. Harmonious? I laughed, dry and humorless. It's a safety cover. Construction crews use them. Roofers use them. Are you a roofer, Jack? I'm a guy trying to keep his car from rusting. It looks like a swimming pool collapsed on your driveway, she said, adjusting her sunglasses. We've received complaints. From who? The squirrels? Neighbors, she said vaguely. It devalues the street. When people drive into Oakbridge, we want them to see elegance, continuity, serenity. We do not want them to see that. She waved a hand at my tarp dismissively. You have 24 hours to remove the non-conforming material, or the fines will double. Daily. Double? Daily? I felt the heat rising up my neck. That's extortion, Patricia. It's the bylaws, she smiled, a tight, thin-lipped expression that didn't reach her eyes. You signed them when you bought the house. Have a lovely day, Jack. She climbed back into her golf cart, put it in forward, and whirred away, leaving me standing in the humidity, staring at my blue tarp. I wasn't going to win this with anger. I knew that. I work in an ER. I know how to de-escalate crazy people. You don't scream at the guy on PCP. You negotiate. So I decided to comply. Maliciously? Not yet. Just regular compliance. I went to the hardware store that afternoon. I walked past the blue tarps. I walked past the silver tarps, too industrial. I found the brown, earth-tone, heavy-duty tarps. They were ugly, the color of dried mud, but they matched the Tuscan earth stucco of my house almost perfectly. I bought 2. I went home, stripped off the blue offense, and wrapped the Mustang in the brown tarp. I tucked the corners. I used bungee cords to keep it tight. Honestly, it looked worse. It looked like a giant bear turd sitting in my driveway. But it was brown. It was harmonious. I slept soundly that night, thinking I had beaten the system. 2 days later, another certified letter arrived. Notice of violation. Section 4, Paragraph C, Subclause 2. Description: unauthorized utilization of non-conforming shade material, brown polyethylene. Fine, $500. I was waiting on the porch when she did her rounds the next day. I had the letter in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. "Patricia!" I called out as the golf cart whined into view. She stopped. She looked at the brown lump in my driveway. She shook her head. "It's brown, Patricia!" I yelled, walking down the lawn. "It matches the house. I held a paint chip up to it. It's indistinguishable." "It's not the color, Jack," she said, not even getting out of the cart this time. "It's the material. It looks like... refuse. It looks like you've bagged a large animal for disposal. It is unsightly. So what am I supposed to do? Let the car rust?" "That is not the association's problem," she said primly. "The bylaws state that any exterior covering must blend seamlessly with the surrounding landscape and not obstruct the visual continuity of the neighborhood. That," she pointed at the brown tarp, "is an obstruction. It creates a visual break in the sight lines of the street. Remove it immediately." "Visual continuity," I repeated, the words rolling around in my brain. "Seamlessly," she added. "If you can't make it invisible, Jack, it doesn't belong." She drove off. I stood there for a long time. The sun was beating down. The heat was shimmering off the asphalt, if you can't make it invisible. I looked at the brown tarp. I looked at my garage door behind it. I looked at the St. Augustine grass bordering the driveway. Seamless visual continuity, I whispered. A slow, wicked smile spread across my face. I turned and walked back into the house. I didn't go to the garage. I went to the fridge, grabbed a beer, and then went to my office. I pulled out the thick binder labeled Oakbridge Estates Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions. I was going to read every single word, and then I was going to make Patricia wish she had never learned the word seamless. I spent the next 4 hours conducting a forensic analysis of the HOA bylaws. Most people would rather scrub a public toilet than read 60 pages of legal jargon about fence heights and mailbox uniformity. But I was fueled by a potent mixture of spite and a hazy IPA. I found it on page 42, Section 4, Paragraph C, Exterior Coverings. All protective coverings for vehicles, boats, or machinery permitted to be temporarily parked in driveways must be kept in good repair. Furthermore, to preserve the aesthetic integrity of the community, such coverings must blend seamlessly with the surrounding landscape and not obstruct the visual continuity of the neighborhood. There were no restrictions on material. It didn't say no plastic. It didn't say no vinyl. It just said it had to blend seamlessly and not obstruct visual continuity. Visual continuity, I muttered, highlighting the phrase with a yellow marker until the paper was soggy. If Patricia wanted visual continuity, I would give her visual continuity. She wanted to see the garage door. She wanted to see the grass. She wanted to see the azalea bush that sat to the left of the driveway. I grabbed my camera. I'm not a professional photographer, but I have a decent DSLR I use for taking pictures of weird skin rashes for medical conferences, don't ask. I marched outside. The car was still under the brown tarp. I needed a reference point. I set up my tripod on the sidewalk, exactly where Patricia usually parked her golf cart to glare at my house. I marked the spot with a piece of chalk. Then I moved the tripod to the center of the street, where a passing car would see the house. I took photos, not of the car. I took photos of the background. I took high-resolution HDR shots of my closed garage door. I took shots of the lawn. I took shots of the driveway concrete. The plan was forming, but I knew my little inkjet printer wasn't going to cut it. I needed something industrial. I needed something big. I hit Google. Large format printing vinyl vehicle wraps near me. Most of the results were for generic sign shops that did grand opening banners. I scrolled past those. I needed a specialist. I found a place called Sully's Skins and Signage, located in an industrial park on the grimier side of town. The website was terrible. Mostly pictures of monster trucks wrapped in flames and city buses wrapped in advertisements for personal injury lawyers. Perfect. I drove over there the next morning on my day off. The shop was a metal warehouse that smelled intensely of solvent, warm plastic, and stale cigarette smoke. The floor was concrete, stained with ink. Giant rolls of vinyl leaned against the walls like colorful logs. Behind a counter made of diamond plate steel sat a man who looked like a thumb with a goatee. He was massive, wearing a black t-shirt covered in dust. "Help you?" he grunted, not looking up from a stack of invoices. "I need a tarp," I said. "Home Depot is 3 miles that way, Chief." "No, I need a custom tarp, a specific image, high resolution, weatherproof, and big, like car cover big." He finally looked up. He had eyes that had seen every bad graphic design choice in the county. "How big?" 8 feet wide, 16 feet long, maybe bigger. I need it to drape. We do vehicle wraps or billboards. I can print on mesh vinyl. Heavy stuff. Won't rip. What's the image? Business logo? You selling hot dogs? No, I said. I pulled out my iPad. This. I showed him the photo. It was just a picture of my garage door and some grass. Sully stared at the iPad. He swiped left. More garage door. He swiped right. A close-up of the concrete driveway. He looked at me confused. You want me to print a 16-foot banner of a garage door? Yes. To put on your garage door? No. To put over a car that is in front of my garage door. Sully blinked. The gears were turning slowly. Wait, you want to camouflage the car? Exactly. My HOA is fining me for having an unsightly tarp. They said it has to blend seamlessly with the visual continuity of the neighborhood. So I want to print the background onto the tarp, so when you stand in the street, the car disappears. It creates the illusion of an empty driveway. Sully stared at me for a solid 10 seconds. The shop was silent except for the hum of a massive printer in the back. Then slowly, a grin split his face. It wasn't a nice grin. It was a grin of shared anarchy. That, Sully said, his voice dropping an octave, is the pettiest thing I have ever heard in my life. Can you do it? Can I do it? Buddy, I can make that car look like a hole in the fabric of space-time. But if you want it to work, like really work, you can't just use a flat photo. The perspective will be off. If you stand 5 feet to the left, the lines of the garage door won't match up. I figured that might be a problem, I admitted. Sully stood up. He was even bigger standing up. We gotta stage it. We need to pick a hero angle. The angle where the bitch stands. Excuse my French. The angle where the HOA lady stands. The curb, I said. I marked it with chalk. Okay, here's what we do. I'm gonna close up shop for an hour. I'm coming with you. We need to measure the distance from the lens to the object, and the object to the background. We need to calculate the focal length so the scale is 1.1. If the bricks on the photo are an inch bigger than the real bricks, the illusion fails. You want Wile E. Coyote painting a tunnel on a cliff, right? Exactly. Let's go. Sully grabbed a bag that looked like it contained specialized SWAT team gear, but was actually full of laser rangefinders and expensive camera lenses. We took his van. When we got to my house, I felt a thrill of illicit activity. Sully didn't just look at the driveway. He studied it like a crime scene. He set up a tripod on the chalk mark I'd made. Okay, Sully shouted, holding a laser measure against his eye. Move the Mustang. It doesn't run. Put it in neutral. We'll push it into the street. We shoved the heavy, rusting hulk of the Mustang out of the driveway and parked it along the curb. Now the driveway was empty. Perfect, Sully said. He adjusted his camera. Now, we take the shot of the empty space. This is our canvas. I'm going to capture the garage door, the oil stain on the concrete, keep it authentic, and the transition to the grass. We'll print this on 13-ounce matte banner material. No gloss. Gloss reflects the sun, ruins the trick. Matte absorbs light. He was clicking away, adjusting focus, muttering about vanishing points and parallax errors. I had never seen a man take a photo of a driveway with such artistic intensity. Hey! I froze. I knew that voice. I turned to see Mrs. Higgins, from next door peeking over the hedge. Mrs. Higgins was Patricia's spy network. "What's going on, Jack?" she asked, eyeing Sully's beat-up van and the laser equipment. "Are you selling the house?" "Just taking some family photos, Mrs. Higgins," I smiled. "Of the driveway?" "It's where we have the most memories," I lied. Sully lowered the camera and looked at Mrs. Higgins. He looked like a biker who had just been interrupted during a meditation session. "Ma'am, We are conducting a geological survey for sinkholes. Mrs. Higgins' eyes went wide. Sinkholes? Big ones, Sully said deadpan. Massive voids beneath the crust. Could swallow a golf cart whole. Best to stay indoors. Mrs. Higgins vanished behind the hedge instantly. Sully looked at me and winked. That bought us 20 minutes before the cops show up. You think she'll call the cops? She thinks there's a sinkhole, Jack. She's gonna call the National Guard. Let's hurry. We spent the next 30 minutes getting the geometry perfect. Sully measured the height of the car, the distance from the Tarp surface to the garage, and the angle of the sun at 9:00 a.m., Patricia's usual patrol time. The shadows are going to be tricky, Sully said, sketching on a pad. We can't print a shadow because the real sun moves, so we print it flat light, like an overcast day. It's the safest bet. It won't look perfect at noon, but at 9 a.m., from the sidewalk, it's going to look like magic. How much is this going to cost me? I asked, suddenly realizing that custom industrial printing wasn't cheap. Sully did some math. Materials, labor, the site visit, probably $1,200. I winced. That was a lot of money. That was a new carburetor and exhaust system for the Mustang. However, Sully added, looking at the driveway and then at the imaginary Patricia standing on the curb. I hate HOAs. My HOA fined me for having a non-conforming mailbox flag. It was red. They wanted brick red. So, I'll give you the Fight the Power discount, $800. Flat. Deal, I said, shaking his hand. It'll take a week to print and cure, Sully said, packing up his lasers. I gotta stitch the files together in Photoshop, correct the color to match that faded paint on your garage door. I'm gonna add some noise to the image so it matches the grain of the real world. When I'm done, you won't be able to tell where the reality ends and the vinyl begins. A week? I asked. I have 24 hours before the fines double. Stall her, Sully said, slamming the back doors of his van. Tell her you've commissioned a custom architectural solution. Use big words. Bureaucrats love big words. Tell her it's being fabricated off-site. Fabricated off-site, I repeated. I like that. Just don't tell her it's a giant sticker, Sully grinned. See you in a week, Jack. As Sully drove off, I looked at my empty driveway, then at the Mustang parked on the street. I pushed the car back up the drive, sweating in the heat, and threw the brown tarp back over it. It looked ugly. It looked hideous. But in my mind, I could already see the future, and it was seamless. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout of Sully's visit. In the suburbs, news travels faster than light, and paranoia travels even faster than that. About an hour after Sully's van had rumbled away, I was in the garage, trying to organize my socket wrenches, a soothing, repetitive task I used to lower my cortisol levels after a shift in the trauma unit. The garage door was open, the brown tarp was doing its ugly duty in the driveway, and the neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet. Then the blue lights bounced off my tool chest. I didn't hear a siren, just the crunch of tires on the driveway and the sudden strobe light effect of a police cruiser pulling up to the curb. It wasn't just a patrol car, it was an SUV, the kind they send when they think things might get tactical. I wiped the grease off my hands with a red shop rag and walked out. 2 officers stepped out. One was young, looked like a rookie who was hoping for a foot chase. The other was older, heavy-set, with a mustache that looked like it had been issued with his badge in 1998. His name tag read Miller. He looked exhausted. He looked like a man who had spent 20 years dealing with domestic disputes over hedge trimmers. "Afternoon, officers," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "Is everything okay?" Officer Miller adjusted his belt, the leather creaking audibly. "Sir, are you the homeowner? Jack? Barely?" Barley, I corrected. Jack Barley. Yes, sir. Mr. Barley, we received a call. Multiple calls, actually, regarding some concerning activity at this address. Miller pulled a small notepad from his pocket. Reports indicate, let's see, unlicensed heavy industrial surveying, suspicious commercial photography, and, a potential geological collapse involving a sinkhole? I fought the urge to smile. Sully's sinkhole comment to Mrs. Higgins had clearly hit the neighborhood gossip relay. There is no sinkhole, officer, and I'm not running a business. We were told there was a commercial van here with industrial laser equipment scanning the property, Miller said, looking around the lawn as if expecting the ground to open up. That was a contractor, I explained. I'm having some custom exterior work designed. He was taking measurements. Measurements? The rookie piped up, hand resting near his holster like I might pull a tape measure on him. For a tarp, I said. Miller blinked. A tarp? Yes. The HOA has fined me for my current tarp. I gestured to the brown lump. They said it needs to be visually seamless with the neighborhood. So I hired a guy to measure the driveway so we can make a cover that complies with the bylaws. Miller stared at me. He looked at the brown tarp. He looked at his rookie. Then he looked back at me. The fatigue in his eyes deepened. Sir, are you telling me that Mrs. Higgins called 911 because you measured your driveway for a car cover? I believe Mrs. Higgins called because she's bored, officer. But yes. Just then, the whine of an electric motor cut through the tension. There he is! That's him! Patricia's golf cart came screeching around the cul-de-sac like a pace car at Daytona. She didn't park. She abandoned the vehicle in the middle of the road and marched up the lawn, wielding her clipboard like a riot shield. Officer, she barked. I am Patricia Vance, president of the board. This man is operating a commercial vehicle repair shop and now a commercial photography studio out of his driveway. It is a violation of Zoning Ordinance 14B and HOA Covenant Section 9. Officer Miller sighed. It was a long, heavy sigh that came from the soul. Ma'am, please stay back. He had lasers, Patricia shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at me. Mrs. Higgins saw lasers. They were scanning the foundation. He's probably running a meth lab in that garage. Why else would he need lasers? It was a rangefinder, Patricia, I said calmly, to measure distance. For what? To build a bunker? She turned to Miller. You need to search the garage. He's clearly hiding something. And look at that thing in the driveway. It's a brown monstrosity. Miller held up a hand to stop her. Ma'am, having a tarp isn't a crime. And having a contractor take measurements isn't a crime. It is if it's a commercial enterprise, she insisted. He's mocking the community standards. Miller turned to me. Sir, are you fixing cars for money here? No, I'm restoring my own car. It's a hobby. I'm a nurse. I pulled my hospital ID badge out of my back pocket and showed him. I save lives for a living. I sand rust for therapy. Miller looked at the ID, then at Patricia. Ma'am, he's a nurse. He's working on his own car. There is no probable cause for a search, and there is no evidence of commercial activity. But the sinkhole, Patricia pivoted. Mrs. Higgins said the man told her there was a void in the crust. Miller looked at me. I shrugged. The contractor has a weird sense of humor. He was messing with her because she was spying on us over the hedge. The corner of Miller's mouth twitched. He was fighting a smile. He turned back to Patricia. Ms. Vance, unless you have proof of a crime, this is a civil matter. Please stop using 911 as your personal hotline for bylaw enforcement. If you call us again about a tarp, I'm going to cite you for misuse of emergency services. Do we understand each other?" Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Her face turned a shade of red that definitely wasn't on the approved exterior color palette. "This isn't over," she hissed at me. "You have 18 hours left on your notice, Jack. If that brown garbage bag isn't gone, the fines double, and I will lien your house." She stormed back to her golf cart. Officer Miller watched her go, then turned back to me. The professional mask slipped, just for a second. "What kind of car is under there?" he asked quietly. 1969 Mustang Mach 1, 428 Cobra jet. Miller let out a low whistle. "Nice. My brother had a 70. He walked back to the cruiser, pausing at the door. "Good luck with the custom work, Mr. Barley. But be careful. People like her, they don't stop. If you paint a mural on that tarp, make sure you check the sign ordinances. She'll get you on a technicality if she can." "Don't worry, officer," I grinned. "I'm sticking strictly to the visual continuity clause." "Right," he chuckled, shaking his head. "Stay out of trouble, Jack." They drove off. I stood in the driveway, heart rate finally slowing down. I had won the battle, but the war was just starting. And Patricia was right about one thing. The clock was ticking. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in psychological warfare. The problem was the timeline. Sully needed a week to print, cure, and hem the invisible tarp. Patricia had given me 24 hours before the fines escalated. I needed to stall. I needed to confuse the enemy. I needed a decoy. The fines started arriving daily. Day 1. Violation, $500. Day 2. Violation, $1,000. Day 3. Violation, $1,250. Includes administrative nuisance, surcharge. I wasn't paying them, obviously. I was stacking them on my kitchen counter in a neat pile that I planned to ceremoniously burn, or perhaps frame, once this was all over. But the mounting debt was stressful. A nurse's salary is decent, but it's not throw away $5,000 on a prank decent. I needed to stop her from towing the car before Sully finished the weapon. I needed to show that I was trying. I went to the Army surplus store downtown. It smelled like mildew and old canvas, a smell I actually preferred to the sterile scent of the hospital. I found what I was looking for in the back: camouflage netting. Not just any camo. This was woodland digital, a mesh of greens, browns, and blacks with fake die-cut leaves attached to it. It was designed to hide tanks in a forest. Surely it could hide a Mustang in a suburb. I bought enough to cover a small house. When I got home, I stripped off the brown tarp. The Mustang sat there, naked and vulnerable, its primer gray patches exposed to the sun. I apologized to the car, then draped the camo netting over it. It didn't look like a car anymore. It looked like a large, leafy bush that had suffered a radioactive mutation. It was lumpy. It was chaotic. It rustled in the wind. It was perfect. I was watering my actual bushes when Patricia rolled by the next morning. She stopped so hard her tires skidded. "What?" she asked, her voice trembling with rage. "Is that—" "It's nature, Patricia," I said, spraying water onto the fake leaves of the car cover. "I'm trying to blend in with the landscape. You said brown. Was ugly. So I went with foliage." "That is not foliage," she screamed. "That is hunting gear. This is a residential neighborhood, not a duck blind." "Actually," I said, turning off the hose, "the bylaws state that landscaping should be lush and varied. This is artificial ivy. It's very high-end. zero maintenance, very drought-resistant. It looks like a sniper's nest. It breaks up the hard lines of the vehicle. I quoted from a website I'd read about tank warfare. It creates an organic silhouette. "I am fining you," she said, scribbling furiously. "I am fining you for the Tarp, and now I am fining you for unauthorized art structures." "It's not art, Pat. It's camouflage. It's literally designed to be invisible." "Well, I can see it," she yelled. "It looks like a swamp monster vomited on your driveway." "You're very hard to please," I said, shaking my head sadly. First blue was too bright, then brown was too dull, now green is too swampy. I'm running out of options here. "The option," she hissed, "is to move the damn car." "I'm working on a permanent solution," I promised. "Just give me a few more days. It's being fabricated off-site. Top priority." "You have 3 days," she said, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. 3 days. Then I'm calling the tow truck. Section 8, Paragraph D, allows the HOA to remove abandoned or derelict vehicles at the owner's expense. And I will deem it derelict, Jack. I will deem it so hard your head will spin. She drove off. I looked at the camo netting. It was ridiculous. But it bought me time. 3 days passed. The fines grew. My anxiety spiked. I was checking my phone every 10 minutes. Finally, on the afternoon of the 3rd day, the day before the threatened towing, my phone buzzed. Incoming call. Sully's Skins. "Hello?" I answered on the first ring. "Jack?" Sully's voice was gravelly and triumphant. "The Eagle has landed." "It's done?" "It's not just done, kid. It's disturbing. I had it hanging up in the shop to cure, and 3 of my guys walked into it. They thought the bay door was open. One of them sprained his wrist. The depth perception is insane. Can I pick it up?" "Come get it. Bring the cash. And bring a truck. It's heavy." I drove to the shop in record time. When I walked in, Sully was standing next to a long, rolled-up tube of heavy vinyl. It looked like a carpet. "We printed it on 18-ounce blockout vinyl," Sully explained, patting the roll. "Reinforced hems, nickel grommets every 12 inches. We used UV-resistant ink, so it won't fade for at least 5 years. And I added the matte laminate like we talked about. No glare." He unrolled a few feet of it on the floor. I gasped. Lying on the dirty concrete floor of the sign shop was my driveway. The detail was excruciating. I could see the oil stain I'd been meaning to power wash. I could see the individual blades of St. Augustine grass on the border. I could see the texture of the stucco on the garage door. The colors were perfectly color-matched to the dreary, sun-bleached reality of my house. "It creates a forced perspective," Sully said, pointing to the lines of the garage door panels. "See how the lines converge slightly? That's the trick. If you look at this from the side, it'll look warped. But if you stand at the curb, at the hero angle..." He kissed his fingertips. Perfection. "Sully," I said, handing him the envelope of cash. "You are a genius." "I know," he said, counting the bills. "Now listen, installation is key. You can't just throw this over the car. It has to be tight. If it wrinkles, the illusion breaks. You need to build a frame." "A frame?" "PVC pipe. Simple box frame around the car. Drape the vinyl over that. Zip tie it to the frame so it's flat like a billboard. If you just drape it on the Mustang, the curves of the car will distort the image. You want a flat plane?" I nodded. "PVC frame. Got it." "Do it tonight," Sully advised. "Do it in the dark, so when the sun comes up, poof." I loaded the heavy roll into my truck. It felt like I was transporting a nuclear warhead. This was it. The nuclear option. I stopped at the hardware store on the way home. and bought 40 feet of PVC piping and a bag of connectors. I got home as the sun was setting. I ate a quick dinner, but I was too excited to taste it. At 11 o'clock p.m., when the neighborhood was asleep, I went to work. I pulled the camo netting off the Mustang. I built a simple rectangular frame out of the PVC piping, large enough to box in the car, but small enough to fit within the tarp's dimensions. It looked like a greenhouse skeleton. Then, I unrolled the masterpiece. It was heavy. Wrestling it over the PVC frame by myself was a workout, but I managed to get it draped. I began zip-tying the grommets to the bottom of the frame, pulling the vinyl drum tight. As I tightened the last zip tie, I stepped back. I was standing in my driveway, under the glow of the street lamp. I looked at where my car should be. My brain did a somersault. I knew the car was there. I could smell the rubber tires. But my eyes told me I was looking at an empty driveway. The image of the garage door on the vinyl aligned perfectly with the real garage door behind it. The grass on the vinyl flowed into the real grass. It was slightly uncanny, like a video game texture that hadn't fully rendered, but in the dim light, it was invisible. I checked my watch, 2 o'clock a.m. Patricia's patrol started at 9 o'clock a.m. sharp. I went inside, showered, and set my alarm for 8:30. I wanted a front row seat for this. I wanted to see the moment her brain broke. The morning sun in Florida is unforgiving. It exposes everything. It bleaches color, highlights flaws, and casts hard, undeniable shadows. If Sully's print job was even a fraction of a shade off, or if the perspective was skewed by a single degree, the daylight would reveal it, instantly. I sat on my front porch at 8:45 a.m. I had a mug of coffee that I was too jittery to drink. I looked at the driveway. It was disorienting. To my brain, which knew the Mustang was sitting there inside a PVC cage, the sight was impossible. But to my eyes, it was empty. The invisible tarp was doing exactly what Sully promised. The image of the driveway continued uninterrupted. The garage door lines on the vinyl matched the real garage door lines in the background. The transition from the real grass to the printed grass was, dare I say it, seamless. From the porch, which was slightly off-angle, the illusion was a bit wobbly, like a funhouse mirror where the garage door looked slightly stretched. But I wasn't worried about the view from the porch. I was worried about the view from the street. The hero angle. At 8:58 a.m., the familiar whine of the electric motor drifted down the street. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. $800 in cash, a week of stress, and a midnight construction project all came down to this moment. Patricia's golf cart rounded the corner. She was early. She was on the warpath. She had the tow truck company on speed dial. I could practically feel her thumb hovering over the send button. She drove with purpose, eyes fixed on my driveway, ready to see the swamp monster camo net. She slowed down. She frowned. She took her foot off the accelerator. The cart coasted to a stop exactly where I had marked the chalk line for Sully. The hero angle. She stared. She adjusted her glasses. She leaned forward over the steering wheel. From where she sat, the Mustang was gone. The driveway appeared completely empty, save for the oil stain, which Sully had faithfully reproduced on the vinyl. I took a sip of my coffee and called out, keeping my voice casual. "Morning, Patricia. Beautiful day for a patrol?" She jumped slightly, as if she hadn't seen me on the porch. She looked at me, then back at the driveway. She looked confused. Not just where is the car confused, but existentially confused. She was trying to process where a 2-ton heap of metal had vanished to overnight. "Jack," she said slowly. She didn't get out of the cart. "You moved it." "I complied," I corrected her. "You said the camo netting was unsightly. You said it didn't blend seamlessly with the neighborhood. You said it obstructed the visual continuity." "So you moved it to the garage?" she asked, squinting at the garage door printed on the tarp. "I addressed the visual continuity issue," I said, dodging the question. "Does it look seamless to you?" She narrowed her eyes. "It looks empty." "Exactly, continuity. Unbroken sightlines, just like the bylaws demand." She sat there for a full minute. I could see the gears turning. She knew my garage was full of junk. She knew the car didn't run. She knew I couldn't have pushed it anywhere by myself. The physics of the situation weren't adding up. Suspicion dawned on her face. She realized the garage door looked a little too clean. A little too perfectly lit, considering the sun was currently behind a cloud, but the door seemed to be in flat light. She stepped out of the cart. "Don't touch the artwork, Pat," I warned, standing up. "Artwork?" She marched up the driveway. As she moved away from the hero angle, the illusion began to break. The perspective shifted. The garage door on the tarp started to look skewed, like a 2D sprite in a 3D video game. She stopped about 5 feet away from the tarp. She tilted her head. She was looking at a photograph of a garage door floating in mid-air, blocking the real garage door. "What?" she whispered, the horror creeping into her voice. "Is this?" "It's a tarp," I said, walking down the steps to join her. "Custom printed, high resolution, matte finish." She pointed a shaking finger at the vinyl. "You printed a picture of your house to hide your car?" "Section 4, paragraph C," I recited. "Coverings must blend seamlessly with the surrounding landscape. It is literally the landscape, Patricia. It is a 1:1 scale representation of the approved architectural elements behind it. You can't get more seamless than that." This is mockery," she shrieked. "It's compliance." "It's a lie. It's a visual lie." She marched forward, hand outstretched. She wanted to physically break the illusion. She wanted to prove that this was just a cheap trick. She reached out to slap the garage door. Thwack! Her hand hit the heavy-duty 18-ounce vinyl with a dull, drum-like sound. The tarp didn't budge. It was pulled tight against the PVC frame. She stood there, hand resting on the picture of the door handle. She looked like she was having a stroke. "It's soft," she murmured. "Why is the garage door soft?" "Because it's a tarp, Patricia." She spun around, her face a mask of fury. "You think this is funny? You think you can treat the association like a joke?" "I think I spent $800 to make you happy," I yelled back, dropping the nice guy act. "I hired a professional. I used a laser. I did everything you asked. You wanted it to disappear? It disappeared. From the street, you can't see the car. You see the neighborhood. You see visual continuity." "I see a giant sticker," she screamed. "It looks ridiculous. If you stand here—" She took a step to the left. "The perspective is all wrong. The bricks are crooked." "Then don't stand there," I said. "The bylaws don't say seamless from every possible geometric angle. They say from the street. Go stand in the street, Pat. It looks great." "I am not standing in the street. I am standing on your driveway looking at a hallucination." She grabbed her clipboard. "This is a violation. This is a massive violation. Unauthorized structure. Deceptive practices. Creating a nuisance." "Which bylaw covers deceptive practices?" I asked. Is that Section 12, or are you making that up? I am calling the board, she hissed. We are having an emergency meeting. Tonight. You will be there. And bring your checkbook, Jack, because I am going to fine you until you have to sell this house to pay for it. She marched back to her cart, slammed it into reverse, and peeled out. I looked at my tarp. I looked at the fake garage door. I poked it. Worth it, I said to the empty driveway. The summons was taped to my front door 2 hours later. Notice of emergency board hearing, agenda. Review of resident J. Barley's camouflage structure and flagrant disregard for community aesthetics. Time, 7:00 p.m. Location, Oak Bridge Community Center, multi-purpose room. I had 5 hours to prepare. I didn't panic. I went into code blue mode. I gathered my evidence. I printed the photos Sully had taken. I printed the email exchange with the sign shop proving the cost and the intent to comply with HOA visual standards. I blew up Section 4, Paragraph C of the bylaws onto a large poster board. I walked into the community center at 6:55 p.m. The room smelled of floor wax and stale cookies. At the front of the room sat a long folding table. Behind it were the 5 members of the HOA board. In the center sat Patricia, looking like a judge at a murder trial. To her right was Ted, the treasurer. Ted was a retired accountant who mostly just wanted to go home and watch Jeopardy. To her left was Brenda, the secretary, who was furiously typing on a laptop. The other 2 members, Mike and Sarah, looked like they had been dragged here against their will. But the real surprise was the audience. The room was packed. There were at least 30 neighbors sitting on metal folding chairs. Mrs. Higgins was there in the front row, naturally. But so were the guys who walked their dogs past my house every morning. So was the guy with the beat-up van down the street. Word of the magic Tarp had spread. This wasn't a hearing, it was a spectator event. Order! Patricia banged a gavel. Yes, she had a gavel. It looked like she brought it from home. The meeting will come to order. We are here to discuss the situation at 402 Maple Drive. She glared at me. I stood at the podium in the center of the room, my poster board tucked under my arm. Mr. Barley, Patricia began, her voice dripping with disdain. You have erected a structure in your driveway that mocks this board and this community. You have covered your vehicle with a printout of your own house. That is correct, I said calmly. Do you deny that this is an attempt to circumvent the rules regarding unsightly vehicles? I deny that it is a circumvention, I said. It is compliance. Strict compliance. I set up my poster board. I pointed to the highlighted text. The bylaw states, coverings must blend seamlessly with the surrounding landscape and not obstruct the visual continuity of the neighborhood. I looked at the board. I tried blue. Patricia said it wasn't harmonious. I tried brown. Patricia said it was an obstruction. I tried camo netting. Patricia said it looked like a sniper's nest. I pulled out the photos of the invisible tarp taken from the street. I held them up for the room to see. A murmur of appreciation went through the crowd. This, I said, is the current solution. From the street, the visual continuity is perfectly preserved. You see the garage. You see the grass. You see the driveway. The car is effectively invisible. It's a trick, Patricia interrupted. It's an optical illusion. It's not real. But the compliance is real, I countered. The bylaw doesn't demand reality. It demands aesthetics. It demands a look. I have provided that look. In fact, I have provided the exact look of the neighborhood. If you rule that this tarp is ugly, you are ruling that a photo of an Oakbridge Estates home is ugly. Are you saying our architecture is unsightly, Patricia? Ted, the treasurer, let out a snort. He covered his mouth with a cough. He's got a point, Pat. He does not have a point. Patricia slammed the gavel. It looks ridiculous when you get close to it. It's 2D. It's flat. So don't get close to it, I said. Does the HOA inspect backyard sheds from 2 inches away? No. You judge them from the street. From the curb, my tarp is a masterpiece of blending in. It is a temporary structure? Patricia grasped at straws. PVC pipe is not an approved building material. It's not a building, I said. It's a frame for a vehicle cover, just like the fiberglass poles in a tent. Is a tent a building? It creates a precedent, she shouted. She was losing the room. The neighbors were whispering and giggling. If we allow this, what's next? People printing pictures of mansions and hanging them in front of their houses. People printing pictures of manicured lawns to cover their weeds. That, spoke up Mike, the board member on the far left, is actually a pretty good idea. The room erupted in laughter. Patricia turned purple. This is not funny. This is about property values. Patricia, I said, my voice steady. I spent $800 on this. I hired a professional graphic design firm. I didn't use a blue sheet. I didn't use a trash bag. I created a custom, neighborhood-specific solution to ensure that when you drive by, you don't have to look at my restoration project. I have done everything possible to respect your eyes. Why are you punishing me for trying too hard? I looked at the other board members. I made eye contact with Ted. Ted, I said, is there anything in the budget that defines what seamless means? Is there a definition of visual continuity that excludes high-resolution photography? Ted leaned back in his chair. He looked at the photo of the tarp. He looked at Patricia, whose vein was throbbing in her forehead. I've read the bylaws, Jack, Ted said. I wrote the budget for them. And honestly, the book doesn't say you can't use a photo. Ted, Patricia gasped. It says it has to blend, Ted shrugged. It blends. It literally matches the paint code. I checked. Thank you, Ted, I said. This is insane, Patricia muttered. I move to fine Mr. Barley the maximum amount and order the immediate removal of the structure. I object, said Brenda, the secretary. The room went silent. Brenda never objected. She was usually Patricia's shadow. Brenda? Patricia looked betrayed. My husband has a boat, Brenda said quietly. You've been fining us for 6 months because the cover is gray and you want it to be taupe. If Jack's tarp is legal, then maybe we can get a tarp printed with a picture of the side of the house, too. Me too, yelled the guy with the van from the back row. I want a tarp that looks like a hedge. I want a tarp that looks like a fountain, shouted Mrs. Higgins. Order! Patricia banged the gavel, but it was too late. The rebellion had begun. I move to dismiss the violation, Ted said loudly over the noise, on the grounds that the resident has technically complied with the wording of Section 4, Paragraph C. Seconded, said Mike. Seconded, said Sarah. You can't do this. Patricia stood up. I am the president. All in favor? Ted asked, ignoring her. 4 hands went up. Patricia sat down, defeated. She looked small. She looked like a woman who had just realized that her power, which relied entirely on people being afraid of her, had evaporated the moment someone decided to be more ridiculous than she was. Motion carries, Ted grinned. Violation dismissed. Nice tarp, Jack. Thanks, Ted. I walked out of the community center to the sound of applause. It wasn't a standing ovation, but it was a solid golf clap from the neighbors. Mrs. Higgins stopped me at the door. Jack, she said, clutching her purse, do you think your man… This Sully could print a tarp that looks like a gazebo? I've always wanted a gazebo, but Patricia wouldn't approve the permit. Mrs. Higgins, I smiled. I think Sully can print you the Taj Mahal if you pay him enough. I drove home in the dark. When I pulled into my driveway, my headlights swept over the tarp. For a second, just a second, I thought the garage door was closed and the driveway was empty. It tricked me again. I parked my truck, walked up the driveway, and patted the vinyl flank of the Mustang. "You're safe now, girl," I whispered. The invisible car sat silently in the night, a monument to the fact that sometimes the best way to fight bureaucracy isn't to break the rules, it's to follow them right off a cliff.